What up, what up, what up? This is your girl, Sada Star, coming to you with another episode of A Day in the Life of the Alpha Woman, the official podcast of the Easy Breezy Life community. Before we jump into today's topic, I just want to welcome our new listeners. Thank you for coming through and seeing what we're talking about here on this platform. If this is your first time joining us, the Easy Breezy Life is a community centered and dedicated to the everyday alpha woman who is trying to balance faith, family, life, and everything in between. We don't have all the answers, but the theme and the idea behind the Easy Breezy Life is that when we come together, we're certainly stronger and we're certainly better. Just to get some disclaimers out of the way, everything that we share on this platform is purely informational and oftentimes stories. We don't expect the advice that we share through our platform, whether it's in word or whether it's written down, to replace professional advice. So if you have a true issue and anything we speaks about sparks or triggers you, we want to encourage you to seek professional, medical, financial, legal, any kind of advice that you need, because we do believe that this Easy Breezy Life is a group project and you need support from your sisters here at the Easy Breezy Life and sometimes professional help to get through it. So before we go into today's topic, which is controlling behaviors and controlling people, how to spot them, how to dodge them, how to manage them, I'm going to take a little break and let you hear from our sponsors. We will be right back. Have you ever thought about starting your own podcast? When I was trying to get this podcast off the ground, I had a lot of questions. How do I record an episode? How do I get my show into all the apps people like to listen to? How do I make money for my podcast? The answer to every one of these questions is really simple. Anchor. Anchor is a one-stop shop for recording, hosting, and distributing your podcast. Best of all, it's 100% free and ridiculously easy to use. And now, Anchor can match you with great sponsors who want to advertise on your podcast. That means you can get paid to podcast right away. In fact, that's what I'm doing right now by reading this ad. I love to use Anchor to reach my strong-willed alpha woman community and help them live healthy, abundant, and successful lives together. So if you've always wanted to start a podcast and make money doing it, go to anchor.fm/start to join me and the diverse community of podcasters already using Anchor. That's anchor.fm/start. I can't wait to hear your podcast. Before we jump into this week's conversation, I feel like I owe y'all an explanation for why I have been MIA. If you follow me, then you know that I usually drop a podcast episode every week or so. I try to stay on the weekly schedule to keep you ready for the week. But April and May have been wild, wild months. If you work in higher education and student affairs, then you know that April and May are grinding time. You're graduating students, you're rounding things up. It is nonstop movement, and your girl's head was spinning. Not to mention, my sister finally celebrated her wedding in the Woodlands, Texas. Ooh! I was so excited for my baby sister. She's a grown woman, so I think I'm not supposed to call her my baby sister, but she's still our baby as far as me and my older sister are concerned. And so being able to be a part of what felt like a Pinterest fairy tale wedding was so magical. I mean, when I say that it rained the day before, it rained the day after, but on the day of her wedding, it was pure sunlight, pure sparkling sunlight, and it just felt magical. And we were so happy for her because my younger sister is someone who is so selfless and continually gives of herself. And so for her to have this wonderful day where people flew in from all over the country to come celebrate her and my wonderful brother-in-law was a moment that I wouldn't have missed for the world. So On another note, I also traveled down there with my niece and nephew who are 6 and 7 years old. And let me tell you, as a first-time mom, it's a lot. I'm not even going to pretend to have it together because in the morning, it's a mission and a half to get out of the house on time just to show up with my shoe on, make sure that the two shoes match and that my makeup is on. Sometimes the makeup doesn't even make it and I just got to get through the day. But traveling alone with a 6 and 7 year old took my auntie game to new levels. I mean, I was in the airport just watching like, girl, don't lose a child. We can lose luggage. We can lose bags, but do not, I repeat, do not lose one of these children. So when I made it back home and my niece and nephew were safe and sound, I gave myself a pat on the back and a gold star because it was not easy. But I did also learn a lot about preparation and how you just cannot joke around when you have multiple children. Like you have to be scheduled on time, on task in order to make it anywhere on time. If not, you can expect to be missing flights and to never be anywhere on time. So it was a great lesson learned for me. And it also just kind of told me that, if I am expecting to grow my family, then this is really the time to start preparing and acting like it. So, you pray and then you prepare for what you want. That is how we show God that we are ready for him to release an abundance of blessings. So today, I want to talk a little bit about controlling people and their behaviors and how to spot them and how to manage them and how to break away from them. I don't know what it is. A lot of alpha women sometimes also struggle with control. And you might be the controlling person. Another person in your life might be the controlling person. But whatever and whoever it is, one thing is for sure. Controlling behavior is suffocating. Nobody wants to deal with it. It's really because regardless of where the root of that controlling behavior is coming from, a lot of times it's rooted in fear. People get really turned off by it. So I want to talk a little bit about 5 ways to spot a controlling person, some ways controlling people act out, and lastly, how you can start to break away from that controlling person. Or not really the person, but the spirit that leads them to be controlling because of whatever it is that they're afraid of losing. Number 1 way to spot a controlling person is when individuals make you feel guilty for spending time with your friends or other friends. Individuals who do not want you to explore other friendships, to explore your endeavors without telling them. They feel like they should be informed by every move you make. That's not really friendship. It's control. And they may not realize that it's controlling behavior, but it is absolutely suffocating. The other thing is they criticize a lot of small things that you do. Everything is a criticism. Everything. Nothing is ever right. They walk into a room, the first thing they see is what has gone wrong in that space. It's controlling behavior because anyone, well, at least for me at this point and being in many leadership roles and working in many different arenas, I have realized that nothing is ever perfect. And if you want to nitpick and find imperfection, you can find it in people and in every circumstance, but most importantly, in yourself. So it's not uncommon to find a controlling person constantly trying to fix others and themselves. I think sometimes too, a spirit of control can send people into doing, lots of corrective things, thinking that if they just adjust one thing about themselves, that, it will make everything better. But really that thing turns into a spiral and a cycle of constantly fixing themselves unto perfection that is never achieved. Not only do they do it to themselves, but they also put that burden and that load on other people. Suffocating. 3, they're very not trusting. They don't trust you to do your job. They don't trust you to communicate. They don't trust you to communicate messages. There's just no trust in a controlling behavior. As a supervisor, I try as much as possible to not be a micromanager. You know why? Because I hate micromanagement. I hate someone breathing down my neck, telling me what to do step by step. You either trust me with the project or you do the project by yourself. That's generally my attitude approaching work. At the same time, I also allow the people who work with and for me to have flexibility and room to express themselves in the projects and in the assignments that we're working on. Because if I control them, then they won't be able to have their own flair, no sense of ownership, and it really becomes me telling them what to do versus them discovering what to do. Now, don't get me twisted. Not being a micromanager does not being laissez-faire. You certainly provide direction, but you do need to give room for people to give their own spin on it. Understanding that sometimes that own spin means that things are going to be wrong and you have to correct it. But if people are never allowed to trip and fall, how will they learn and actually become leaders? So another sign of controlling people is there's no trust. They actually think that they're operating out of a spirit of excellence, but it's just no trust, period. The next thing is they spend a lot of time talking about protecting and saving and helping you. I'm trying to help you. I'm your one friend. And the whole other world is against you. Controlling manipulative behavior. Okay? Number one, no human being is your savior and can actually save and protect you from anything. Take that from me as a mama who spent 11 months in the NICU with her son there every single day. As much as I was in the doctor's faces, reading every research journal, taking every question and taking notes, I knew that at a certain level, I could not guarantee my son's safety 24/7. So I had to trust God and trust a higher power to do that. But controlling people think that if they just monitor you enough, if they just hold you tightly enough, they're protecting you, or they want you to believe that that's protection. And it's really not. It's just control. And lastly, they make you question your sanity. Sometimes controlling people can make everything about them. Every decision you make, every move you make, the calls you don't make, when you don't have time for them, becomes about them. It becomes a really self-centered approach and conversation, and you're wondering where this entire narrative came from. So now you're like, am I losing it? Or is this person off the wall? A lot of times it's a controlling person off the wall. Now, some ways, a lot of times the controlling behavior doesn't come out until said persons get into positions of authority. It's one thing when you're peers, but the moment a controlling person has a position or authority over you, you will begin to see signs of that controlling behavior. So let's say someone's a politician, a doctor, or a pastor. Being a controlling person helps them feel important, powerful, and secure in some way. That level of authority, that level of influence, that level of significance. And they will stop at nothing then to prevent others from taking away their perceived power and authority. So it now starts to show up in abuse of power, abuse of authority, needing everything to be run by them. Very controlling behavior. And then sometimes willing to sacrifice others to maintain power and control. So they'll manipulate their team, they'll manipulate their colleagues, they'll manipulate other leaders, whatever it is that they feel that they need to do to get to that end game, they're willing to do to maintain control of the situation. And another way, that I also have seen it in the past is making everybody feel unconscious and walking on eggshells when you're around them. Gradually chipping away at your self-esteem, leaving you deflated, making you feel insignificant, making you feel like you have no value at all outside of them is a method of control. Acting like they are the ones who add value and meaning to your life is an active method of control. We're meant to encourage each other. We're meant to build each other up. But controlling people prefer to be seen as your hero or as your savior or as your source. It's out of line. It's out of whack. And it's someone really putting themselves in the position of God when God has said you have no other gods and that he's a jealous God. Controlling people will sometimes coerce and find other people to try to control you. Very manipulative. They will mastermind whole situations. Use your friends, use your family, use people that you love. Get real close and chummy with them to try to control you. So what does that look like, right? I remember, growing up in my life, I've had a series of mentors and family members who exhibited controlling behavior. And it was always like a you are for me or against me kind of situation. If you make a decision that's good for you, then you've got to be against the family. If you make a decision that's healthy for you, then you've got to be against the group. It always insists on there being a clan where this person has incredible and undue control over the clan, the way the clan moves, how everyone makes decisions. So important to break away from those kinds of relationships. Controlling people tend to be demanding and want you to conform to their way of doing things. There is no understanding that there are different worldviews, different families of origins, different personality types. They believe that their behavior, their way of seeing the world is the norm. And in touch, they try to make everyone conform to that and make you feel like you're not right because you don't see things the way that they do. Well, that's controlling behavior. We got to call a spade what it is, call it out, and move on. Controlling people are oftentimes preoccupied with their own appearance and appearance of those within their grip, obsessing over what you're wearing, obsessing over how you wear it, obsessing over your haircut. Now, let me tell you, I used to be very, very controlling when I came into my marriage. I learned very quickly that there was no controlling another human being, and actually got way more bees with honey when it came to my marriage when I just decided to release and accept that my husband was a completely separate individual from me and that he was going to do things differently. Now, does it end the friction? Absolutely not. But does it give me a more peaceful and joyful marriage? Yes, it does. And I prefer my peace and joy. The next thing is controlling people will sometimes just associate with important people because they believe they add to their own image of importance. So relationships become merely a means of self-advancement. They just want to seem important. They just want to be, they're oftentimes clout chasers. So anybody who looks like they're winning, they gravitate towards them. Anyone who looks like they may not be winning, they conveniently forget. But it's controlling behavior because, again, it's about keeping up appearances. Next, controlling people will rarely admit when they are wrong, even when the evidence is stacked up against them. And it's not uncommon for them to be very argumentative, always in a fight, always in an argument. You have to begin to ask people, if you are the common denominator in every conflict, is it really the people or is it you? Controlling people do not know how to accept responsibility. They rarely apologize for their wrongdoing. And when they do something wrong, it's typically because, I didn't have all of the details, and so I made this decision. It's never really because of a character flaw. Controlling behavior. Lastly, controlling people are abusive. They yell at people. They will curse at people. They will put their hands on people. They will do anything to exercise control and authority over their partner, over their friend, over anyone that they're in a working relationship with because that control makes them feel secure for whatever reason. Now, growing up, we're in an environment where love was misconstrued or control was misconstrued for love. I encountered many people along the way who contributed to my success, but then somehow thought that success meant that they had permission to control my life. And the challenge is when you grow up in a household where a parent or an elder is exercising control and making you believe that it is love, it distorts your thinking into believing that control is love. And what happens? You grow up, you meet controlling people. You're all of a sudden attracted to having relationship with these controlling people because you believe their kung fu grip on you is love. It is not love. It is placing you in a relationship of unhealthy codependence where you cannot have your own thoughts, make your own decision, and live your own life path. And eventually, this controlling person ends up ripping away your will and your right to self-determination. Now, let me tell you something. Of all of the things that God does in the Bible and that we talk about, the one thing he did not take away from man was their free will. So when God sees we see people trying to take away people's right to make their own decisions and live their life according to their own terms, according to God, that's a really manipulative spirit. It's almost bordering sorcery because you're trying to make someone do what you want them to do. God doesn't even do that. God doesn't even make people worship him. He gives choices. You have the choice between life and death. Choose life. But you do have a choice. So whenever you find yourself in a situation where someone is insisting that you have to do things the way they want you to do it, you have to move how they want you to move in order for the relationship to maintain healthy, know that you are not in a safe space. You are under a serious grip of control and have got to get away. So now, how do you get away? Oh, I thought you'd never ask. Number one, you got to put some distance between you and those individuals. Individuals who feel like they have a right to tell you what to do, how to do it, when to do it, and why to do it, need some space. Significant space. So when you put some space, allow some time, allow some distance, it might be months, it might be years, the message you send to that individual is, I love you, but I don't need you to do life. Controlling people like to make others believe and feel that they need them to do life. So the number one way to prove to a controlling person that you don't need them in that way is to actually do life without them. Distance. Lots of distance. If you got to cut down the phone calls, if you got to cut down the communication, if you got to block them for a season, do whatever it is you need to do to make it clear that there is space. Number two, stop sharing the details of your every move with them. Just stop. Don't share any move. Make a move, have a success, and then share it. What does that say to a controlling person who thrives on always having the upper hand? It says to them that there really is nothing that cannot be accomplished without you. The world keeps on spinning without them. They do need to understand that, because that also will lose the grip of control on your life. Next, make your appearances as sparing as possible. Rare. This also kind of ties back to the space, right? But if I give you space and I'm showing up all the time, you call, I come, you ring, I show up, that just enforces the negative behavior. Controlling people need to understand that they are not entitled to your time, your resources, and attention. They need to understand that just like them, you have many things to do. And that when you choose to give up your time, when you choose to give up your resources, when you choose to give up your attention, it's something to be appreciated, not expected. We live in the United States, and it is a capitalistic country where people are constantly chasing one thing after another. People are busy. So you got to kind of send a message to a controlling person that they're not the be-all, end-all in your life. But let's say this controlling person is someone at work and they're like a supervisor and a boss and you cannot get away from them, right? Because I've also been in that kind of circumstance situation. And you know what? It is very painful. It is very difficult. It is very challenging. It is a furnace. You have to begin to exercise boundaries. And sometimes exercising those boundaries is asking for everything to be documented, is asking for clarity, things to be in writing when they ask you to do things, is making sure you know the policy, right, at work, so that if a controlling person tries to either, make you do something that's outside of your role, is working you unnecessarily hard, that there are policies, labor laws in place to protect you. You have to know what is in place to protect you when it comes to dealing with controlling people in a work environment. Now, let's say a controlling person is a colleague or it's a friend. Build other connections, build other friendships, work, focus on the relationships in your network in other places to also help that person understand that there are other people who possess their talents and their abilities. Because controlling people oftentimes think that they're the only one who can do something right and in a certain way and that they're really needed. And I hate to say this, but nobody is needed that much. I love my job. I think I do a great job doing it, but I also know that my organization can have another me in a minute. So as Beyonce says, controlling people need to know that they are not irreplaceable. Somebody else will come and do what they do better. So it's not an eye for an eye, but it's really doing the subtle things to let them know that you're not buying it. The other thing that it is important to do, especially if a controlling person is coming in the form of an elder or a mentor, is to develop other mentors, other people who can lead and guide you. You want to have what I would call, a board of directors. A board of people who are so high up and beyond you in years that they can give you the bird's eye view because of their wisdom. And keep in mind, everyone doesn't possess the same kind of wisdom, right? And so you definitely need different mentors for different things in different seasons. Everything's not for everybody. But you want to ensure and be sure that you're not depending too much on one soul relationship. Because that is what gets us trapped into the bind of control, and it becomes so hard to break away from that. So those are just some quick tips for ways that you can deal with controlling people. Give them some space and distance, assert yourself, create boundaries, find other mentors, and make sure you let them know you can have another them in a minute. God bless you. I love you. Have a blessed week. Kick butt. Let's come back next week and do it again. Take care, Alpha Woman.